It is 9:30. The May meeting of the Wood County Board of Supervisors will come to order. The clerk has taken roll. Quorum. At this time, I would ask Supervisor Fisher to come forward for our invocation and then ask the body to remain standing for our pledge of allegiance.
Well, this thing doesn't want to work with me. Can you hear me? No? Well, I'll just be really loud. I can do that. Would you pray with me if you'd like? No, that's right. Dear Lord, I pray for guidance as we seek to be public servants for the great people of Wood County. I also pray for wisdom as we make decisions today. I also pray for the safety of all those who live here in Wood County. I also pray that we would always remember those less fortunate who are in need, and may we provide services to them to help them become whole again. I would also like to give a special prayer to our friend and colleague, Brad Hamilton, and his family. Be with them in this time of sadness and give them comfort, we pray. I pray this in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Supervisor Fisher. Reading of the April minutes. Motion by Hamilton, second by Klein. The motion on the floor and seconded to approve the April minutes. Is there any additions, subtractions? Seeing none, all in favor of that motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Thank you. Excusals today, we have one, Supervisor Holbrook. Resignations, we have none. Appointments and reappointments. Health and Human Services Committee, 3-year term, Heather Wallach. CDBG Housing Committee, 2-year term, Laura Francis. Veteran Service Commission, interim term ending November 2019, Mitch Waite. Without objection, we can take all three of those together. Motion by Fisher, second by LaFontaine. We have a motion on the floor and seconded to approve those appointments and reappointments. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take this as a voice vote without objection. All in favor of that motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Thank you. Public comments. Is there anyone here today that wishes to make public comments at this time? Any public comments? Anyone? Seeing none. We have no acknowledgments or recognitions. We do have a special order of business. We have John Bokemer here from WCA today. He is chosen to wait till the end of the program for his presentation, so we will move into the packet. Referrals on page 7. Those referrals have been passed along to the proper committee. Pages 8 through 12, we have executive committee meeting minutes. Wellness Board on pages 13 and 14. Administrative Coordinator's Report on page 15. County Clerk, pages 16 and 17. I don't know if any of you appreciate those pictures like I do, but I'm kind of a history buff. I think we tell a lot. Those ashtrays.
Send a cigarette in the mouth.
Finance Director, pages 18 through 25. Pages 26 through 29, we have Human Resources. IT on pages 30 through 33. Maintenance, page 34. 35, Safety, Risk, and Management. Treasurer's Report on page 36. Which brings us to our first resolution brought by the Public Safety Committee and the Executive Committee. And I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 19-5-1. To provide for unanticipated revenue from the Department of Justice Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program available through the U.S. Department of Justice and supplemented by funds derived from the state of Wisconsin budget through penalty assessment fees. Fiscal note, the cost to be funded in the 2019 budget are overtime sheriff administration. The adjustment to the budget totals $91,326.
Motion by Hamilton, seconded by Flair. We have a motion on the floor and seconded to approve the resolution. Is there any discussion concerning that resolution? Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to our next three resolutions on pages 38 through 41. And without objection, I think we can take all three of those together. Seeing no objection, I would entertain a motion to approve those by Fisher, motion by Fisher, second by Bry.
You want me to read those?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Please read those.
Just a second. Was it Brian Fisher?
Yes.
Give me a second. Okay, that was fun. This will be Resolution 19-5-2 to accept the offer of sale of tax deed property. Fiscal note, the offered amount of $17,000 minus real estate taxes, tax deed expense, and special charges where we break even. Next resolution, 19-5-3. Will authorize the sale of tax deed property back to former owner. The paid amount is $3,518.28. Resolution 19-5-4, authorize the sale of tax deed property back to former owner. Fiscal note, paid amount of $15,064.82. And the next resolution, 19-5-5, to accept offer of sale of tax deed property. Fiscal note, the offer amount of $500 plus the easement payments minus real estate taxes and tax deed expense incur a loss of $39,652.08.
There a motion to approve?
I thought I had one there. I got Brian.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yep.
We have a motion on the floor and seconded to approve the previous read resolutions. Is there any discussion concerning those resolutions? Supervisor Clendenning.
Hey, Commissioner, I just wondered, was there any special charges in those other ones sent back to, and the owner paid? Was there special charges on those? That's probably difficult, probably don't question, but I'm just wondering because with the special charges of $720.36 on the first one, you know, we still took a loss, correct?
That is correct, but the ones you're questioning about where the owner had to pay the full amount, so that is every single tax, assessment, anything owed, every single year they have to pay back in full in order to get their property back.
Okay, thank you. That's what I...
Any further discussion on the motion? See none, please vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Which brings us to our sixth resolution on page 42, brought to us by the Executive Committee, and I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 19-5-6, to align the wages for certain positions identified as being substantially below market and adjust the wage grades of those positions to place Wood County in the best situation to recruit and retain talented employees. Fiscal note, to transfer $18,739 from Human Resources budget and $2,851 from available funds and contingency to Sheriff and Edgewater. At the time of this request, the funds available in contingency are $304,465.13. The adjustment to the budget totals $21,590.
Motion approved by Clendenny, second by Grider. We have a motion on the floor and seconded to approve the resolution. Is there any discussion concerning that resolution? Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. And that resolution passes unanimously. Thank you. On page 44, you have the accompanying pay structure chart for that resolution. Pages 45 through 50, we have minutes from the Health and Human Services Committee. Pages 51 through 56, we have a report from the Human Services Department. CVSO on pages 57 through 59. Public Safety, 60 through 69. Central Records minutes, 70 and 71. Coroner's Report, page 72. Humane Officer, pages 73 through 78. Sheriff's Rescue, pages 79 through 105. Sheriff's Department reports, 106 through 124. Supervisor Clendenny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed the reports are in here from their latest meeting, but however, their minutes are not. I don't see any reason for it. Somebody to put in their reports from a committee meeting, and we not know how it was voted on at the committee level. I mean, this committee seems to be back on a month on everyone. Is it because they hold their meeting too close to the Board of Review that they can't get them in? Then I say, why have the material from that meeting in your packet when there's no minutes of the meeting?
You're talking about public safety?
Yes, I am.
Method.
So a lot of times the departments will, when they put their committee stuff in the slot for the committee meeting, will also right away put in the items for that meeting in the county board slot. So it's there and they don't have to worry about having to remember it. How it works in the sheriff's department, I don't know. I just put in the packet what is in the slot at the time at 2 o'clock on the Wednesday before county board. And yes, those meetings are tight against the county, that deadline, that county board rule that says everything has to be in the slot, so those minutes are, it's tight. It's a tight turnaround because they do meet later than others.
Okay, I'm sorry, Supervisor Clendenny.
But to me, that still don't solve the problem. You know, there was a lot of things, particularly at that meeting, that was discussed, and it was voted on to do something about it, but we won't know that till next month. You know, I just say, I don't know why people can't get their minutes in.
I think that is the problem with the committee.
Chairman Bell, up to Supervisor Pollock and his committee.
I think
Well, the minutes were turned in. We just do it the way it's probably always been done, so I'm not sure why you don't have the minutes there, Bill, or
No,
nobody.
the minute, Supervisor Pollock, the current minutes were not in the committee slot for county board packet. That's not, they weren't there.
Well, we'll have to check into why that's happening again.
most of the items,
I'll check into that.
most of the items go with the exact budget. Right. For this one.
I would think that you'll have to control whoever's at your meeting, but Supervisor Meyer.
Most of the items on those minutes are being turned over to the exec committee anyway, so you'll be handling it before the next meeting, so they'll be coming up at your exec board.
106 to 124. C minutes, pages 125 through 130. Supervisor Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The clerk has got this moving around with the supervisors on Ruth Moody. We've got 15 signatures on here, so there's a couple supervisors that haven't signed it yet. Can I approach the bench here? Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Curry. I believe I need to sign.
Yes, you do. I will hand it to you.
Yeah, well, and the clerk has just told me we can sign it whenever. It doesn't have to be done before we act on it, so. Okay, we continue. C, again, C minutes, pages 125 through 130. Golden Sands RC and D, pages 131 through 138. Land and Water Conservation, pages 139 through 142. Planning and Zoning, 143 through 152. UW Extension, pages 153 through 156. Which brings us to our seventh resolution on page 157, brought to us by Seed, and I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 19-5-7. Approve several zoning map amendments to the Town of Grand Rapids zoning map. Fiscal note, no cost to Wood County. The Town of Grand Rapids is responsible for any cost associated with administering their town zoning ordinance.
Motion by Hamilton, second by Lightner. We have a motion on the floor and seconded to approve the resolution. Is there any discussion concerning that resolution? Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. And that passes unanimously. Before we go any further, Lisa, I'm kicking out up here every vote. Is that happening to anyone else, or is it just me? Is everybody kicking out on the votes? Okay. I don't know if that's a problem for you guys, but I'm having to log in every time we vote. So. Okay. We move on. J&L, pages 158 through 172. And our eighth resolution brought to us by J&L, and I would ask the clerk to read that.
This will be Resolution 19-5-8, to authorize out-of-state travel for 2 child support employees to attend the National Child Support Enforcement Association Leadership Symposium, August 11 through 14, 2019 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Fiscal note, the cost for meals, parking, lodging, and mileage is approximately $1,800. The registration costs of $998 are being paid by the Wisconsin Child Support Enforcement Association through scholarships. The expenses are eligible for federal reimbursement, so the cost to the county will be approximately $612.
Motion by Hamilton, seconded by Bride. We have a motion on the floor and seconded to approve the resolution brought by J&L. Is there any discussion concerning that resolution? Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. And that passes 17 to 1. Thank you. Pages 170 through 74 through 179, we have PERC minutes. 180 and 181, we have the Highway Commission report. Pages 182 through 187, we have Parks and Forestry reports. And our ninth resolution on page 188, brought by the HERC Committee as well as Judicial and Legislature. legislative, and I would ask the clerk to read that.
This will be Resolution 19-5-9, to encourage the modification of state law to clarify that revenues generated by forfeitures for overweight vehicles are to be paid to the highway department responsible for maintaining the road upon which the violation took place. Fiscal note, the forfeitures at issue vary significantly from year to year and from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but the reader can anticipate about $50,000 going to the Wood County Highway Department annually to pay for road repairs.
Motion by Price, second by Hamilton. We have a motion on the floor and seconded to approve the resolution brought by Herc and J&L. Is there any discussion concerning that resolution? Any discussion? See none, please vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Our 10th resolution on page 189 brought to us by the Clerk Committee, and I would ask the clerk to read that.
This will be Resolution 19-5-10, to become eligible for project development and maintenance grant funding from the state of Wisconsin DNR ATV Trail Aid Program for projects totaling $460,161. Fiscal note, if awarded from the state of Wisconsin DNR, there would be no cost to Wood County. Total reimbursement from state ATV aid.
Motion by Fire, second by Hamilton. We have a motion on the floor and seconded to approve the resolution brought by the Herc Committee. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. And that passes unanimously as well. Thank you. Next resolution also brought by the Herc Committee, and I would ask the clerk to read that as well.
This will be Resolution 19-5-11, to become eligible for snowmobile trail development and maintenance monies for proposed trails and bridges on county and private lands for the 2019-2020 snowmobile season. Fiscal note, no cost to Wood County. Total reimbursement from state snowmobile aid account.
Motion by Fisher, second by Zaleski. We have a motion on the floor and seconded to approve the resolution brought by Herc. Is there any discussion regarding the resolution? Any discussion? See none, please vote. And that passes unanimously. Our final resolution brought by Herc on page 191. And I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 19-5-12. I'm sorry, this will be Ordinance Number 19-5-12, to rescind and recreate Wood County Ordinance Number 403, highway access by ATV and UTV operators. Fiscal note, none.
Motion by Fisher, seconded by Fire. We have a motion on the floor and seconded to approve the ordinance brought by the Herc Committee. Is there any discussion regarding that? Supervisor Clendenny.
I don't know if that's included in this resolution, but the county trunk, not county trunk, but Highway 73 and the Coosa Bridge, has that been finalized or is it?
I'm not aware that it has been finalized. Without objection, Roland.
Yes, that's part of the resolution to rescind this and reestablish it to include the 73 bridge, the county trunk, or the state trunk highway 80 bridge in Babcock, the state trunk highway 54 bridge in Dexterville, and the state trunk highway 80 bridge in Dexterville.
And I'm told that page 193 has them all listed. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Any further discussion? Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Page 192 through 94 is that ordinance, and I think those are listed, the things that you actually just stated, Roland, are listed there. Central,
Bill has.
I'm sorry, Supervisor Clinton.
I understood it to be that the final thing was up to the town of Saratoga on their half of that bridge.
They've passed, I'm sorry, they've passed it, Bill.
Saratoga did?
Yeah, Saratoga passed it a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, thank you.
That's what I think, is it in the hands of the state council? Did the final decision in the hands of the state?
Correct. We need to send,
The two municipalities have agreed to it, and the state has to give their final stand?
correct.
Okay. Pages 195 and 196, Central Wisconsin State Fair minutes. Library minutes on pages 197 through 202. UW Commission, pages 203 to 204. Which brings us to a sad note and our final resolution. And I would ask the clerk to read that, please.
This will be Resolution 19-5-13, relating to the life and public service of Ruth Moody.
Is there a motion? Supervisor Hamlin, second by Supervisor Ruth. Thank you. We will do this on a voice vote as a objection. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Thanks. I would ask the body to rise and observe a minute of silence out of respect for our former supervisor. Thank you. Many of you remember Ruth. I know she said it. I always had a soft spot in my heart for Ruth. She was here for all the time I was here. And she will be missed. Vice Chair Rover.
So I'm disappointed that Trent didn't put this picture up, but when he was on the county board at one of the WCA conferences, there's a picture of Trent as the youngest county board supervisor and Ruth as the oldest county board supervisor. And it's the best picture, and I told him to show it, but obviously he did not. And but if you want to see it, it's just absolutely a piece of history, and hopefully he will put that in the archives. And 50 years from now, somebody will see that picture. But it's really a good picture, you guys.
Personal antidote, when I first was elected to county board chair, the very first call I got from any other supervisor was from Ruth Moody, who of course was acting as the chaplain and trying to nail me down on the invocation. So from there, our relationship was always very, very good. We'll miss her. We'll miss her. That brings us to Mr. Holcomer, who is here for a presentation, and we're honored to have Mr. Holcomer as a representative from the WCA this morning. Are you set up as far as your computer needs, John?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Well, if you don't, well, John is setting up there. For those of you who don't know John, he comes here very well versed. John is a former county board person, the mayor of Verona during the time of all of their growth. He's also been the sergeant at arms at the state capitol. In addition to that, he has served as director of insurance operations for the WCA, as the legislative director of the WCA, and now the director of outreach throughout the state. So John covers all the bases, and I can tell you from a personal relationship, somebody who knows of what he speaks. So I would ask that you pay close attention. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I can't help thinking, but the mayor of Verona sounds like a line from a Shakespeare book.
There we go.
I'll hand this the floor.
He's straight. Well, they're doing that now, making an announcement. Okay, so on your desk, and I'll just take this opportunity to say this, on your desk is Survey 3. boxes. I think you probably hit it last night. But these are open-ended questions, and Nancy and I decided that we would distribute the survey so that you could give it a little thought maybe before you responded to these open-ended questions. And the questions are on the back. So this is exactly the way it's going to look when you have it on the computer. And then if you can just answer those questions, and then we'll have one more survey that condenses the information from the answers in these questions. If you want to write your answers on the back of this sheet and hand them in, that's perfectly acceptable as well. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to take a break for a minute while we get set up here. So let's take 10 minutes. Yeah, 10 minutes. We are back in session and ready to go. Without further ado, John Holcomer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board and staff members that are here. It's always a pleasure to be here. I prefer being on the road than sitting behind a desk, but sometimes I need to get to the office to get caught up on a few things. So when I leave here, I'm doing a presentation this evening in Washburn County on a different topic. I want to thank Now we're good? Does it pick me up enough this way? Or do I need to hold it? Okay. So I appreciate the introduction from Supervisor Plumel. I've been involved in government for a long time. Actually, this is my 44th year that I've been involved in local government. Started in town government, and then in 1984 I ran for the county board. Served 4 terms there in Manitowoc, including the board as chair and administrative coordinator at the time. Then I was hired by WCA. I lobbied for them for 2 years. I did transportation, environment, land use, child support issues, and welfare reform. I was Sergeant at Arms for the state for almost 9 years for the Senate, and then I've been back at WCA since September of '02. I've always had a passion that I felt that as an association, we needed to spend more time in the counties with our members. There's a lot of supervisors that never have the opportunity to serve on our board or steering committees or attend our annual conference. So for them to see the value and the resources that we can provide, it's important for us to get to the county. So about a little over 5 years ago, they pretty much turned me loose and said, we don't have a job description, we don't know what this really means, but go make of it what you think it ought to be. And it's been good for the association, it's been good for our members. So just a couple things I wanted to update you real quick. The last time I was here, I talked about the PACE Wisconsin program. I want to let you know that that is going extremely strong. By the end of the day, we should have 2 more counties join the program. We'll be up to 40 counties of the 72 in the program. We've had 15 applications that have actually gone through and have been approved through all the final stages. 12 of them have gone through the closing stage with the banks. I attended last week Tuesday was the open house, the ribbon cutting for one of those projects that was very important to the city and the county of Fond du Lac. Alan Biko, the county executive there, was very actively involved with that. So PACE is going strong. If you hear of any commercial property owners in the county that are interested in utilizing PACE, we're more than happy to talk to them. As long as I'm talking a little bit about energy efficiency, I wanted to mention, first of all, commend you for your activities with SoulSmart and taking a look at being able to promote energy efficiency. I think that's absolutely wonderful. And about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, there was another new organization in the state of Wisconsin that started, and it's called the Wisconsin Conservative Energy Forum. I serve on their advisory committee along with former Governor Thompson, former legislator Mark Honadale, Debbie Crave from Crave Farms, who they're noted for all the work that they're doing in environmental issues and energy issues. And what this organization is, Wisconsin Conservative Energy Forum, is really, its purpose is to educate more of the conservative elected officials, mainly at the state level, that there are other opportunities to take a look at for energy efficiency. And that's been going very strong, and they will continue to do that type of work. The final thing I was going to mention this morning, because it impacts Wood County, is there's another organization that the Counties Association participates in called Wisconsin Rural Partners. And they have an annual meeting. They rotate around the state. We just had it a few weeks ago. We were in Rice Lake. The year before, we were in Baraboo. We've been in Green Lake and so forth. Next year, that meeting will be the 22nd and 23rd of April in Marshfield. And usually the first day we go around and we tour businesses, we tour about great things that are going on in the community, and then the next full day there's keynote speakers and sessions. So I will make sure, Mr. Chair, that you get the information on that. But if anybody wants to take a look at Rural Partners, it's wiruralpartners.org. So more to come on that. So this morning I've been asked to come in and talk about, most people refer to this presentation as the roles and responsibilities presentation. I really like to mention that it's not only the roles and responsibilities, but it's where do we get our authority from, because we are different in county government than towns, cities, and villages and schools. And then I want to talk a little bit about the 3 different administrative functions or administrative structures of county government. That's something very unique to counties and to counties in Wisconsin. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I can take questions at the end, or if there's questions during the presentation, we'll have those go through you.
Thank you.
So
We'll hold the questions till the end, I think, John.
Okay.
It's okay, too.
All right. So why are we doing this? Well, a little bit of it I mentioned, because there's no one else that's comparable in the state of Wisconsin to county government. There's no one in the public sector, there's no one in the private sector, or in the nonprofits. So we believe that unless we know what our duties and responsibilities are and what authority we have, it can be very confusing and more opportunity for discord, and we don't want that to happen. What we do in county government is getting more and more complex every day, and certainly we need to take our job seriously. So when I went way back and I took a look at our forefathers and when they created counties, one of the things that they pointed out was they really believed in the European model of services being delivered at the local level. So that's how our forefathers determined, and then they've added on since that, of what type of duties and responsibilities we would have as counties. And in those old records, it goes back to say that their intent was that at the local level, people could get the services that they needed within 24 hours of riding on horseback, getting to the service, having the service delivered, and getting back. That was their intent, that everyone could get service at the local level within 24 hours. So sometimes earlier on, not the last couple of years, people would ask me, where are you getting this terminology? Where are you coming up with this? Are you just making it up? So if you see the statutes listed on the bottom here, you can tell that this comes directly from the state statutes. So here's what we have as far as county government authority. We are a body corporate, and when we talk about running effective meetings, we talk about that we are a body corporate. We need to function as that. And that we should run the meetings in an appropriate and a responsible manner and that type of thing. We have the authority to sue, and we can be sued by others. I'm not going to read through all this, but this is what it says in the statutes, is the authorities that counties have. In the Constitution, in that first section, it says the legislature may confer upon the Board of Supervisors of several counties of the state such powers of local, legislative, and administrative character as they shall from time to time prescribe. Now there's 2 things that I really want to point out in this section. And one is, let me talk a little bit about this first, about home rule. So where we are different, counties are different than the other municipalities is, let's say cities and villages, for an example, they have home rule authority. So unless they are prohibited from doing anything, prohibited by the federal government, by the state government, any other laws of the Constitution, unless they're prohibited from doing something, they can do it. Counties do not have home rule authority because we are an arm or an extension of the state government. That's where we're different. So we can only do what the state allows us to do. They give us the authority, so it says the legislature may confer upon. That's where we get our authority. We get our authority from the state. And then, in the very end of that paragraph, or that sentence, it says, as they shall from time to time prescribe. Again, that's the state legislature. So if they can give us power, what else do you think they can do? They can take it away. And from time to time, they do take it away if they think that we have crossed over the line too far. Or sometimes they will clarify what our authority is. In the second section, this talks about who the county officers are, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about that later. So it also identifies which of those county constitutional offices we are required to have as counties. Now, we do have something called administrative rule, and sometimes people get a little bit confused by that. So in section 5903, parent 1, it says every county may exercise any organizational or administrative power subject only to the Constitution and to the enactment of the legislature, which is a statewide concern and which uniformly affects every county. So basically, we can decide which one of the three forms of government that we want to have: county executive, county administrator, or county administrative coordinator. So they give us that authority to decide. But if we as county boards, if the public or someone else thinks that we're not operating or functioning efficiently, they can also require us by referendum, by petition and referendum. They choose which form of government we're going to use rather than the board itself. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. So again, we can decide which one of those three forms of government we're going to have, the administrative structure. We can decide to appoint, because there's a limit based on population, as to what size our board will be. We can determine how many committees we're going to have, how often they meet, how many people are on the committees, that type of thing. That's administrative home rule. That authority we do have. Again, the state, when I said they can give us authority, they can take authority or clarify authority. Back in January of 2010, the Attorney General did opine that a county with a county administrator cannot place the appointment, what the statutes give the appointment authority to the county administrator cannot be taken away by the board. And when we get to the three forms of government, I'll talk a little bit more about that. So again, they can give us authority, take authority, or clarify what we currently have. The statutes also say that we can self-organize counties. Wood County, I went back and I looked, Wood County became a self-organized county in 1997. So if you become a self-organized county, there's three additional things that you can do that you have more flexibility. One is the use of staggered terms. And I can tell you every once in a while that comes up. Counties say, well, maybe we ought to consider staggered terms. And that way that, the high percentage of turnover that we have on every election cycle, that if we had it every year, then it wouldn't be, half the board turning over at one time. There is no county that uses the staggered terms. And usually when they consider it and they find out what the cost of the additional elections would be, they determine that it doesn't make sense to have staggered terms. It also gives you more flexibility for compensation of supervisors and for filling vacancies on the county board. It's a simple majority vote of the county board to become an organized county, and it's a simple majority vote then to reverse that decision. There's never been a county that has become a self-organized county that has then reversed that decision, but you can do that as well. The statutes also require that we have an organizational meeting by law. We need to do that the third Tuesday of every April following an election. Usually that evening, it's only the election of officers, unless we know that there has been no competition for any of those officer roles. Then it's possible that committee appointments can be made that night as well. But usually there's no other transaction of business except for the election of officers. So you're required to meet that third Tuesday. You can adjourn and move to a different date. And what the statute says, it doesn't talk about election of officers. It just states that the purpose is to organize and transact business. The annual meeting, and I can tell you that this, if you read through it, this might sound complicated, but your clerk certainly is well aware of when the annual meeting needs to take place. I think it's important because I include a lot of things in this presentation, so I leave it in here. But one thing I wanted to point out that we're seeing more and more counties do for their annual meeting or when they adopt the budget, especially for counties that meet during the day. There's been a lot of thought that if they have the public hearing during the day, they're not getting the input from the people that are working during the day. So what counties have done is they notice the public hearing on the budget for, let's say, 10 o'clock in the morning. And then when the public hearing, there's no one else to testify anymore at that point or make any comments, rather than adjourn the meeting, they recess the meeting. And then they'll reconvene it at a later date, perhaps that same evening or the next evening. If you do that, there's still only one notice. You don't have to renotice the second meeting. We think that's important because some of the counties, like I said, they're holding 2 different sessions of public hearings on the budget, but not recessing the first one, so they don't have to give the additional notice requirements for it. So this is one of the simplest quizzes of all times because you have the answers in front of you. But we do this to make a point, again, why counties are different than other levels of government. So the 3 branches of the federal government, the legislative branch, the executive branch is the president, the legislative is House and the Senate, the executive is the president, and then the judicial, we have the federal court system. The 3 branches of the state government, you have the legislative branch, which is the state assembly. We have the executive branch, which is the governor, and then the judicial would be the state courts. 3 branches of city government, legislative would be the city council, the executive would be the mayor, and then you have municipal courts. Let's talk about county government. What are the 3 branches there? Clearly, your body, the county board, is the legislative branch. The executive branch, that is determined by which one of the 3 forms of government you have. County executive, county administrator, or administrative coordinator. But do we in county government in Wisconsin have a 3rd branch? We don't. We pretty much run and manage the circuit court system, but that is a state function. They utilize our facilities, we provide other support, but the judicial branch here is state government. Again, it's one of those examples where we are partners with the state. So why are we different than every other layer of government? It's because of the way our forefathers set us up. A lot of our families came from the European countries, and that's how they did it there. And they believed strongly in service at the local level. So does that mean that we must operate differently? Yeah, in some cases we have to, and in some we don't. But we have to keep in mind, again, that we get our authority from the state. They really set us up that we would be an extension of state government, that we would be a partner. As an association, we wish that they would be more of a partner with us, rather than just telling us what we have to do and not giving us enough money to do it. But we are an extension of state government. So there's really 2 different forms of government. There's of governance. There's traditional governance. We see this a lot in more in the private sector and stuff, where the board approves staff action plans, and then they have complete oversight of what the staff is doing on a daily basis. Here in Wisconsin, counties we operate with policy governance, where the board states what the organization must achieve. So the board provides the leadership, they're visionary, they do strategic planning, they approve budgets, hire good department heads, those types of things. But it's not on a day-to-day administrative function, is not what our county supervisors do. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a little bit. We do want to talk, during this presentation, we always talk a little bit about county government in other states, because Supervisor Plumel can tell you that if he goes to a NACO event, and if you talk about a county board supervisor, no one else knows what you're talking about. No other state calls their county elected officials supervisors. In most cases, they're called commissioners, In Louisiana and Alaska, they have boroughs or parishes, but no one else calls county board of supervisors like we do as supervisors. So usually in other states, their commission, what we would call a county board, is either a 3, 5, or a 7-member board. Most common throughout the country is a 5-member board. Usually they're very well paid. They have their own offices within the courthouse. They have their own staff as well. They have absolute authority over operational aspects of the county. Usually they have a weekly commission meeting, county board meeting, and then they do road tours. They do all these other things the other days of the week. But they do. They are considered, in most cases, full-time, and they have absolute authority. Wisconsin does not even allow for that form of government, for the commission form of government. So it's one of those things where we, again, would have to go to the state to get permission to do that. Two other things I wanted to mention. One is when I talk about how we are different in county government, a couple examples are when counties took a look at, when budgets really started getting tight, they took a look at the county sales tax. That wasn't something, the optional county sales tax, that wasn't something that we could just do. We had to go to the legislature and say, we need additional sources of revenue. Let us do this referendum. Let's get the public's approval to do it. We couldn't just do it. Same thing with wheel tax, those types of things. So I think that's important to remember. Another thing I was going to mention where we're different than most other states, because again, we are an extension of state government, is that we do most of the human services programs where in other states it would be done by the state and not by county government. So again, when we go to other states or we go to the annual conference and we talk about how many employees we have in county government in Wisconsin, it's hard for them to grasp that because we're running most of the human services programs. Most states, they would have a state-owned nursing home, maybe a few spread around the state, where we have county-owned nursing homes. That is unusual. Veteran services officers in most states, they're state employees. They happen to be one located in each county, but they're state employees, not county employees. And then where we're very unique, we are the only state in the state of Wisconsin where the counties in Wisconsin maintain, the county highway departments maintain and do the snow removal on the state and federal highway system. Done nowhere else in the country. And our state and our counties, we believe that is the most cost-effective way of taking care of the snow removal and maintenance on the state system. But again, we are partners there. We sign annual contracts with the state for those services. But again, that's somewhere where we are very unique. Just a little bit more on the alternate forms of governance, so or government. In the United States, the state with the least number of counties is Delaware. They have 3 counties. We have 72. Texas has 254 counties. And in Texas, it's interesting, most of their commissions are 5-member commissions. When they have elections, they have 4 districts. And those commissioners get elected within their district, okay? And then the 5th person, it took me a while to figure out what was going on there, but the 5th person is called a judge. And the judge is elected on a county-wide basis, and the judge then becomes what we would consider the county board chair, but they're called the judge. And in a lot of the smaller counties, they also happen to be the judge for the county. They may or may not have any legal background whatsoever, but that's how they do it in Texas. So let's talk about the form. Again, let's get back to Wisconsin and talk about the 3 forms. We have the county executive form of government, which of the 72 counties, 11 counties have the county executive form. And I'm going to go through each one of these in a few more detail. County administrator, we have 28 counties that have the county administrator form of government. County administrative coordinator, we have 33 counties that have that form of government. And in most cases, of those 33, it's the county clerk that has the title, but usually doesn't have any duties, responsibilities, or authority. So a little background there, this happened when I was on the county board in the mid-'80s. The state said that there were some communications from the state to the counties that weren't getting to where they needed to go. And a lot of what was happening is they would look at who the county board chair was, they would send that communication. A lot of times it went to that individual's home and it never made it to the courthouse. So the state said, in the mid-'80s, they said, if you don't have a county executive and you don't have a county administrator, you must have an administrative coordinator. So the simple thing, and what almost all the counties did, including Manitowoc County where I came from, they named their county board chair the administrative coordinator. It really didn't clear up in most cases the communication problems. So the trend that we're seeing, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, is the trend that we are seeing is going from a weak county administrative coordinator form of government to the county administrator form. And we're going to talk a bit more about that. First of all, WCA does not have a position on which form of government you should have. We believe that those decisions are best made at the local level, and we are never going to come in and tell you what we think you ought to do. We will talk about trends, we'll talk about things that we see happening, but we will never tell you what you should do. The most recent move to a county executive was Portage County. That was in 2006. And what had happened there is the public was not real happy with how the board was functioning, so they went to petition. They had enough signatures on the petition to move forward to a referendum, and the referendum failed. That made the public even more mad, so they went back to a second referendum, and that referendum passed. It's not what the county board wanted to do, but the public had made the decision for the board. So in 2006, the county was required to go with the county executive position. Portage County is also the smallest county in population that has the county executive form of government. And typically, I think I'd have to go back and look, but I think 8 of the 11 counties that have a county executive are the most populous counties in the state. I will say that right now, Washington County, who had the administrative coordinator form of government, and then their longtime county board chair decided to retire. At the same time, they created a county administrator form of government, and now they're looking at the possibility of going to the county executive. They're the only one that I'm aware of right now that is even considering that. So since 2007, 11 counties have moved from the administrative coordinator position to a county administrator. Clearly that is the trend. And one of the handouts that I had, and there's some of these handouts are one of the desks in the back, if anybody wants any extra ones. This map shows you very well which one of the 3 structures each county has. And we can talk about that more. Another one of the handouts, so I don't forget, is I always bring this along. Wood County, I think they have attached, this is an appendix to their ordinance on county board rules. It's a job description for our county board supervisors. I think they did a really nice job of that, and a number of other counties have used that and revised it for their purposes. So almost all counties have moved away from the county board chair serving as the administrative coordinator to having a full-time coordinator or some other county official designated as the administrative coordinator. So one of the issues there is usually that person is not given duties or responsibilities or a job description, and so it's usually, not always, but a very weak form of government. Currently 14 clerks serve as the county administrative coordinator, and again, as we move to a county administrator, that number goes down. So I'm going to walk through each one of the 3 forms of government. The county executive, remember we have 11. County executives are the 72. The statutes say they are the county executive is the chief executive officer of the county. I want you to remember this terminology here that coordinates and directs all administrative and management functions. That's going to be the same exact words when we get to county administrator. The county executive coordinates and directs all administrative and management functions. Doesn't talk about policy there. That is a board responsibility. So the statutes say, and this was recently changed, that the number 750,000, that threshold, Until recently, that meant only Milwaukee County. So in the last session, the legislature took a look at every place in the statutes where it said 650,000, because that was specific to Milwaukee County. And rather than looking at each one of those and changing where they needed to make changes, they just increased the threshold to 750,000. So if you are a county over 750,000, which is only Milwaukee County, you must have a county executive. You have no choice, you must. And Milwaukee County does have a county executive. Counties with less than 750,000 may, by a simple vote or resolution of the county board, you can determine that you would go to a county executive. Or the public through a petition. And with a petition, you need 25% of the votes in the last gubernatorial election. That's how many signatures the public would need to then force the next step of the referendum. So the public can, as they did in Portage County, they can require you to move to that form of government. The county executive appoints and supervises department heads, subject to the board confirmation. So the county board can determine that we're just going to let the county executive make those appointments. We don't need to weigh into that. So if the county board wants to waive that confirmation authority, you may do so. But then you should do it across the board. You shouldn't pick and choose when you're going to confirm. The county executive appoints members to boards and commission where otherwise the statutes would give this authority to the county board or to the chairperson. So basically what it's saying here is that any board or commission that has citizen members on it, those appointments would be made by the county executive, no longer by the county board or the county board chair, however your process works here. So if the committee or if the board or the commission has public members on it, let's say Human Services Board, as an example, where you would have citizen members on and you would also have county board supervisors, the entire Human Services Board, including those county board supervisors, would be made by the county executive. And the statutes say that the county executive submits the annual budget to the county board. County executive has veto authority, so very much like the governor of the state of Wisconsin, the county executive can veto ordinances and resolutions, appropriations when it comes to the budget that the county board approved. The county board could still override a county executive veto by a 2/3 vote. So now we'll move to the second form of government, which is the county administrator form of government. If you're a county less than 750,000, again, the board can determine on its own to go with the county administrator form of government, or the public has the option, again, by petition and referendum, to require you to go to a county administrator. The county administrator, once the position is created, that person is appointed by the majority vote of the county board. And that's important. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The statutes say that the county executive is the chief administrative officer, where for county executive, it says county executive officer. And then that same language that we saw before for county executive. County administrator coordinates and directs all administrative and management functions of county government. County administrator would also appoint and supervise department heads. The county board still maintains the ability to confirm those appointments if they wish. The county administrator answers to the county board of supervisors and also submits the annual budget to the county board. So usually when a county is considering going to a county administrator's position, the two things that I hear is the county board doesn't like to give up their appointment authority. In our opinion, that is not really a significant issue because the county can maintain its authority to confirm those appointments. And we would never suggest that the county board should just oppose, every single appointment that a county administrator, county executive is making. But the board does not have to confirm those appointments. And what that means is then the county executive or the county administrator would have to go back and nominate someone else for that position. So the county executive or the county administrator need to work with the county board. And the second thing is they don't like that, most people don't like that a county executive or a county administrator prepares and submits the annual budget to the county board. By the way, there's a bill working through the legislature right now that would allow municipalities to have 2-year budgets rather than 1-year budgets. We think it's likely that it will pass. We aren't sure if municipalities or counties will adopt that process, but that is in the legislature right now. And so with the budget, when the county board, when the county administrator or county executive submits the budget to the county board, they're submitting the budget, but they don't get to vote on the budget. The county board can pick it apart, they can pull things out, they can add things in, that type of thing. So we understand why there's concerns, but usually once the county board gets familiar with that process, it works pretty well. This is directly from the statutes as well, and it talks about the county administrator being appointed solely on merit. They're appointed by a majority vote of the county board. And it goes on to talk about how they are appointed and hired based on their experience, their training, their knowledge, their qualifications, all those types of things, and that no weight or consideration shall be given by the board to residence, to nationality, or to political or religious affiliations. So a county administrator gets appointed, hired by the county board by a simple majority vote. The county administrator also can be removed without cause. This is unusual in a lot of cases. The county administrator can be removed without cause. So at any time when the county board, certainly you have to notice a meeting, but if the county board determines that it's time for that individual to move on, you're going to bring someone else on, a simple vote of the majority, a simple majority vote of the county board can remove that person from their position. So that's another strong point, that the administrator has to work with the county board. If they don't work with the county board is simply going to remove them and bring on someone else. So to whom is the county administrator accountable? I just talked about that. The board at any time may remove the administrator if they believe that their performance is unsatisfactory, and then they can engage in hiring another person. And the action of the board is final. So again, it's very different than a lot of other public positions out there. If the board, by a simple majority vote, removes the county administrator, there is no appeal process, none whatsoever. The administrative coordinator is similar to a county administrator, but they do not have the appointment authority, and the statutes say that they are responsible for coordinating rather than coordinating and directing. So in a lot of counties where there's a sort of a weaker form of the county administrative coordinator form of government, we will have some departments and some of the standing committees that will say, you don't have any authority. You have this title, but you don't have any authority. So the county administrator, or the county must, as I indicated before, if you don't have a county executive administrator, then you must designate someone as the administrative coordinator. And the statutes really don't say much. They say a lot more about executive and county administrator. But when it comes to county administrative coordinator, it says the administrative coordinator shall be responsible for coordinating all administrative and management functions of the county government not otherwise vested in law by boards or commissions or in elected officers. It also says that the county administrative coordinator can be an elected or an appointed official. And then where we have conflicting thoughts is the statutes say it can be an elected or an appointed official, but then the Attorney General has an opinion that they put forth in October of 2011 that indicates that the position of county supervisor and administrative coordinator are legally incompatible. So it was at that point after 2011 where almost all the counties that had the county board chair as the administrative coordinator have now named someone else in that position. So there are counties that have administrative coordinators, what I wanted to mention before, I wanted to go back because I don't think I said this. In the county executive form of government and the county administrative form of government, when we talk about appointments to boards and commissions, the authority for the county standing committees that you have, that is maintained by the county board. The county executive or county administrator do not make those appointments. So if it's finance or personnel or, what you would have as your standing committees, it's only those boards and commissions that have public members on. What I was going to say is there's some counties, as far as the administrative coordinator, if it's not the clerk who serves in that position, it could be the county corporation council, which if it were a county that had a county administrator, you would not be able to do that because the state has already determined that the corporation council reports to the board, not to anyone else. They're supposed to make sure you don't get in trouble legally, and they're supposed to be always looking at everything with a legal mind, not with a management mind. So this sheet, I have it in the presentation, but I also gave you a copy of it because it's easier to see. A couple things I wanted to point out on here. If you look at the very left-hand column and you go down to removal, we always believe that this is important for people to understand. If you have a county executive that is not performing appropriately and need to be dismissed, there's only one person in the state of Wisconsin that can dismiss that person, and that's the governor. Now, you can do it at the ballot box, you can do it through a recall, a person could die in office, those types of things, but when it comes to removal of a county executive, midterm, it can only be done by the governor. Administrator, it's a simple majority of the county board, and the same thing for the administrative coordinator. I mentioned that only the county executive has veto authority. If you look at veto board actions again in the very left-hand column, veto authority. And then department heads, and this is something I always want to make sure that everyone is clear. The statutes say that the county executive and the county administrator have the authority to appoint department heads. The board can have the authority, you have the authority unless you waive it, to confirm those appointments. But in a county executive form of government or county administrator form of government, when it comes to removal of department heads, even if the county board confirms the appointment, the county board does not weigh into the removal of. That is done solely by the county executive or county administrator. So I just thought that handout would be helpful to you as well. So let's talk a little bit about what our duties and responsibilities are. For the county board, again, we do not have home rule authority. We can only do what the statutes allow us to do. Part of that is to levy taxes, and we do the administrative and management authority only to the extent not authorized in the statutes to others. County board chair typically, this is in the statutes, presides over meetings of the county board, administers oaths. They may or may not do that. In some cases they don't. It may be the clerk or some other appointed county official. They countersign all ordinances. Commonly, they act as a spokesperson for the county board. They provide guidance in moving things through when you have actionable items on your agenda. So one thing when we talk about this, when we do a presentation on running effective meetings, is when you are electing your officers to the board and you're looking at who the chairs of committees might be, it's really good if they have at least a basic knowledge of parliamentary procedure and how to run a meeting effectively. And then typically, the county board chair appoints committee members subject to the confirmation of the county board. County board supervisors' authority is collective versus individual. So this is important, and we'll talk a lot about in conversations about how we work collaboratively, collectively, cooperatively, and the majority of the work that we do is at the committee level, not at the board level. County boards function with a very strong committee system. So that the term supervisor is a historical term because that's how our forefathers created it in the statutes. It's not necessarily a descriptive term of what you do as a county board supervisor. So county board supervisors serve primarily in a legislative function. That's different to those states that have the commission form of government that I mentioned that are full-time. And the legislative function that you do is largely limited to policy making through lawmaking, budgetary approval, and then you see the word cooperative decision making. So here are a number of things that I put together on a slide, what are basic functions for county boards. I'm not going to read through each one of those points, but I do want to talk, one thing that I've really seen change in the last 5 years or so is that the counties are really conducting strategic planning. Sometimes they start, one or two departments do it, and then the county board sees the success of that strategic plan. And so a lot more counties are getting involved in that process. And if you don't have a strategic plan, it certainly is something you should be looking at. If you do have a strategic plan, you should be taking a look at revising that as well. One of the things I saw in Marathon County that I really liked, they have committee descriptions. So each committee has a description of what their responsibility is. And when you look at their executive committee, that's one of the responsibilities of their executive committee is to annually review the strategic plan to make sure that they're doing everything that they said they were going to do. And then they make recommendations to the board if necessary to revise. So these are basic county board functions. I intentionally had a lot of words on that prior page because that is talking about leadership, being visionary, setting policy. And a few on this page, because what you do is you enact policy. We are not at the county board level in Wisconsin to get involved in the day-to-day management of the county. So you set the policy, you hire good people, you approve budgets, and then you allow them to do their jobs. That's really how we function effectively and responsibly. There's really 4 ways that we set policy. It can be done by plans, comprehensive plans. I just talked about strategic plans. You might have all certain types of sorts of plans that are out there. The second way is by budgets. I say that the budget is the most important planning document that you have because it determines what services are provided, how they're funded, and at what level they're funded. So I really believe that your annual budget and if you have a 5-year capital improvement budget, those are your most important planning documents that you have. And certainly the county board should be involved in that. That's policy. And then ordinances. An ordinance is a local law prescribing rules of conduct. That's important. So most county boards have their county board rules are actually in ordinance. And we strongly suggest that you do that if you don't have them in ordinance because it allows you then to take action. There's some teeth there because it's a local law. And I've got a number of counties that I'm working with right now that believe it from time to time, there are some unruly or some supervisors that need some guidance or discipline, and counties are doing that. Like I said, I'm working with a number of them right now. So having it in local law is important. So ordinances, they are enforced, again, by the local body. They can be a permanent part of your governmental code. That doesn't mean that you can't ever revise them, but they become a permanent part of your law. They can also be used for regulatory purposes, for licensing, zoning, peace and order. And then there's resolutions. So resolutions are they're temporary in nature. Usually they're used to communicate the body's opinion. You may pass a resolution here and send it on to all the other counties, to your legislators, to the governor's office, to WCA. Other counties may do the same thing for you if they want to share. But they are usually, they're not a local law. It's more of a communication tool. Most counties also, the bottom bullet point, most counties also use a resolution when they approve the annual budget. Roles and responsibilities, and we'll talk a little about governance and then a little about leadership. What we see, and something that was always very important to me in every vote that I always took, the first thing I thought before I took the vote was, is this in the best interest of the public? Not if it was, in my personal opinion, the right thing to do, or those that supported me. I always looked if I believed it was the best decision for the public. And as an individual, I believe that if that is the attitude that we have going into making decisions, it doesn't mean that we have to agree on everything. We can have differing opinions, but if our goal is to serve the public, and that is their number one interest in serving the public, I believe that we will have more success. Effective board operations are based on mutual understanding and respect for each other's position and viewpoint. Effective board members support the majority decision once the final decision has been made. I'm working in 2 counties right now where the county board has, for several months, they have taken action. They have approved specific ideas that they're working on. And in both of those counties, we have supervisors that aren't willing to accept the fact that the county board has made a decision, and it's time to move on. So they're going behind the back. In some cases, it's where they need town approval, as well as county approval. The county has already taken action. The towns had given approval. Now they're rescinding that approval. It's becoming a real mess. In the other situation, we have a county board supervisor who does a regular newsletter, and in that newsletter, basically, she's inferring that the county board took different action than what they did, and the public is really getting confused, and continues to do this on multiple issues. So the county is determining how they're going to deal with that issue. Effective governance will include long-term strategic planning. Every time I do this presentation, I talk about the value and the process of strategic planning. That is extremely important. Let me give you an example there. In 2014, Buffalo County, they have a 14-member board. 10 of the 14 members were replaced in one election. A number of the incumbents didn't run, and of the incumbents that did run, only one election, and it was all over. It was one issue, it was fracking. 10 of 14 new board members. The former county board chair was extremely capable. I say this with due respect, that he ran the county. He put the budget together. He did everything. The board pretty much rubber stamped everything that he did. All of a sudden he left. He decided not to run for re-election. The new chair who got elected and never served in county government before called me up and said, "We have no idea what we're doing. We have no strategic plan. No one here knows how to do the budget. Can you come and help us?" And I did. It's just something that we do. But that's why it's really important that you have a strategic plan. You have someone that's monitoring that on a day-to-day basis, really, to carry out your strategic plan in the event that you have a significant turnover on the board. And that's just, that's not just one board. Chippewa County, they had 2 years ago, 47.7% turnover on the county board. A very, very divided board. They're functioning very well now, but it took them a while to get up to speed. When we talk about leadership, leaders should model and set an example for others. Supervisor Plemmel knows this, that I have 5 grandchildren and another one coming in July. And it just reminded me, as I see them grow up, they, at a very young age, they want to do everything that we're doing. They want to say everything that we say, right? They really do. It's amazing how quickly they pick things up. So a good leader should model the way and set an example for others. They should also inspire a shared vision. Should always challenge the process. You want positive outcomes. And sometimes that means compromise. You have to work together. Not everyone's always going to get their way. You should enable others to act, and you should encourage the heart to allow others to act. One of the most difficult things for me was learning to serve as a mentor. I always found that I was so busy, it was easier for me to just do things than train somebody else to do it. A good leader becomes a mentor. That's important. So we should think about that when we are in leadership positions, that we're grooming other people to serve in leadership roles within county government. Maintain morale and a positive work environment for county staff. Extremely important. And I will tell you, in municipalities, it's not just counties, where the morale is poor, they're seeing, especially now, and I project in the next decade, or next 10 years, we're going to see even bigger problems with recruitment and retention. We are seeing a lot of movement with county staff, going to other municipalities, going to other counties. I was in one county not long ago, and they made an announcement that a department head was leaving, and I kid you not, a supervisor went, "Yes, we're going to save more money." But then they wonder why they can't hire people. They can't find people that are willing to come to their county. So your staff is your most valuable asset that you have in the county. You have to work with them, you have to respect them, you have to allow them to do their jobs on a daily basis. And then you also need to hold others accountable that they're always promoting the best interest of the county over their personal goals or ambitions. Ethics, I talked a lot about ethics in another presentation. I won't go into a lot of detail here. But again, one of the things is that you support the majority's decision once the body has been made. That is extremely, extremely important. You may not always agree with it. There may need to be some compromise, but you need to promote that decision. The county board has the overall budget authority. However, its relationship to county offices and departments must be consistent with the statutes and with the Constitution. And what I mean by that is, if you have a county executive or you have a county administrator, you must respect what duties and authorities that the statutes have allowed that individual. And I'm also referring here to your county elected or your county constitutional officers. And we'll talk about that in a few slides. So again, the role of the board is to be visionary, to be policymakers, to be leaders. County board supervisors and department heads or staff have very different responsibilities. Supervisors serve primarily in that legislative or policy-making role. Department heads and staff serve in an operational or an advisory role to the county board. I leave this slide in there because it's in the statutes. It basically just says that by June 1st, the counties have the authority to appoint their committees. Committee creation, a county board may establish as many standing and advisory committees as it deems necessary. So no one puts limits on you except yourself as to how many committees, how many people, when they meet, that type of thing. The authority to appoint members to a standing committee, board, or commission, again, varies depending on which one of those three forms of government you have in place. There is one county that I'm aware of that the entire county board makes the appointments to committees. It's a very cumbersome process to try and get that many people to agree on committees. It's not confirming the appointments, it's actually making the appointments. They have a county board meeting solely to make those appointments. In the statutes, these are the committees that are required, that you must have, or some version of this. They may be part of another committee, but you must have these committees. Counties are structured so that committees do much of the preliminary work. We talk about the heavy lifting being done in the committee, and then they'll make recommendations to the board, or in some cases, they have the authority that they can take actions on their own. Committees usually have the knowledge, expertise, and a better perspective of what is needed in the community because they're working with those issues. Committees know who in their community their departments serve and the programs that are available within their departments. The committees have access to the appropriate staff to assist them in their planning needs. So I always suggest to supervisors when they talk about a process, well, I'm not on such and such a committee, but I'm really interested in this issue and, how do I deal with this? And we always suggest that they work through the committee system, through the appropriate standing committee for whatever that issue might be. Because remember, no individual supervisor has any authority to make decisions outside of the committee or the board. I think there's another slide here that talks about that in a little bit. So committees and county board supervisors on committees really are to monitor performance, review and make budget recommendations, draft ordinances and resolutions. That doesn't mean that you as a county board supervisor have to draft those resolutions. You can work with the department head, county clerk's office, corporation counsel, whoever it might be, to help you draft those ordinances and resolutions. Consider strategic planning efforts. So there was one department head in a county that approached me and said, our county board just does not want to do strategic planning. They don't believe in it. And I said, my first question was, do they know what it is? And he said, I don't think so. And I said, well, you could do a simple internal strategic plan for your department if you can do it without spending any money outside of what you budgeted. So why don't you go ahead and do your own strategic plan? They did. They did an excellent job of it. And when the county board saw what that department did for strategic planning, the first comment was, if this is what strategic planning is all about, I'm for it. I'm going to do it for the county. So again, committees assist in policy development for the county. Committee chair role and responsibility. When appointed to a committee chair position, supervisor takes the leadership position or leadership role in matters before that committee. Committee leadership includes setting the tone, the agenda, goals, making reports and recommendations on the committee's behalf. So again, when it talks about setting the agenda, there's different processes in every county. Sometimes there's different processes for setting agendas even within the county. I strongly recommend that you have in writing what that process is. There's a new presentation I put together last year on appropriately drafting agendas and minutes, and we talked about there is having a written policy how things get on the agenda. We had, and I won't mention the county, but the unfortunate situation where it's actually the chair of the committee, this specific committee passed away, and the county board made an appointment to fill that vacancy. The other supervisors that were on the committee knew that this controversial issue was coming up, didn't want to chair the committee. So the new person came on who had never served in government before, now is chair of the committee. At the very first meeting, 2 department heads wanted to speak to give the pros and cons on the decision, not their personal opinion, but the pros and cons. This newly appointed county board supervisor, who's also a new chair, but never served in government, said, I'm the chair of the committee, I decide who gets to speak. And he did not let those two county department heads speak at a committee meeting. And I kid you not, this is the honest truth, later that day after that meeting, I got a call from that newly appointed chair. And he said, John, I understand that you're in charge of training, so I want you to come up here and tell the county board that I have the authority as a committee chair to do whatever I want to do. And I said, but you don't have that authority. It's whatever the board gives you as far as authority. That's what's important in the process. And then he kind of chuckled and said, please don't come up here. But also that same day, I got a call from one of the committee members, the county board chair, and the corporation council, and said, we need you to come up here. We need you to come up here and do some training. So I agreed. We picked the date. Before I was up there, they had a second committee meeting. So between the first meeting and the second meeting, this chair told everybody, don't worry, I've got it figured out. I know what I'm going to do. And that's what he kept telling them. So in between meetings, they were talking about this, which is a violation of the open meetings law. They shouldn't have been doing that in the first place. Then they got to the meeting, and what this chair told the department heads is, today I consider you a public member. We limit our public members to having 3 minutes worth of comment. He looked at his watch and he said, the clock started ticking. Well, the county board changed that. They now have a rule in place about department heads' ability to speak at committee meetings, which I think is ridiculous that they had to do that. But I just point that out as an example. So when it comes to policy and administrative and the operational staff, we talked about the board should really decide the what and the why, and then your administrative staff should determine the where, when, and how. And what we use here as an example is, will the county establish a hiking trail system? Certainly, that is a policy decision. That is something that the county board should weigh in and make the decision. Will the system benefit the county? Yeah, that's a policy decision. Are you going to bring more tourists into your area because you have this trail system? Is it going to improve the overall health of the residents of the county because you've improved the trail system? Those are policy decisions. But when it comes to the how, when, and where, you should allow your administrative staff then to determine that. They will know better because they're doing this on a daily basis. It may be one or more departments that are involved in maintaining the system. When it comes to the time frame, allow the department heads to make that decision. Unless you specifically say, let's say you do a budget later this year and you say, in 2020, we are going to improve this trail or build this trail, then you're giving a directive to the county staff to do that. And again, where will the system need to be maintained? Allow your county staff to make the determination how that is best handled. On the administrative side, they are really to take a look at the implementation of the policies and strategies that you put in place. It says here, and I don't like this one, their focus is more narrower and shorter term. Yeah, I think that's true on a daily basis, but any good department head, any good staff are also going to be taking a look at the long-term impacts. They're involved in the day-to-day operations. A lot of what they do is related to smaller functions rather than the bigger, the visionary type things that you're looking at. They address departmental or individual needs. A lot of what they do requires attention to detail and requires specialized training. This slide and the next slide, and I know this is getting pretty long, and I will tell you, I'm not going through every slide in the presentation. Not because they're not important, but I want to really try and hit the highlights here. This slide and the next slide talks about a specific case, court case in the state of Wisconsin, where the courts weighed into the authority of a county board or a county executive. This is Outagamie County. And a couple important things here. The first bullet point, the county board's function is primarily policy making and legislative, while the county executive, again, that's the county executive form of government, while the county executive functions as the administrator and manager. Then they go on to define policy. In the next bullet point, legislative power, as distinguished from the executive power, is the authority to make laws, but not to enforce them or appoint the agents charged with the duty of such enforcement. And then finally, it says the crucial test for determining what is legislative and what is administrative, it has been said to be whether the law, whether it's making a new law or it's executing a law that's already in existence. So in this case, what the court determined is that if the law is already in place and the county board has made the decision, then the county executive has the authority. But if it's something new that you're trying to create a new policy, then the county board has the authority. And the courts sided with the county board in this case that the county executive was overreaching and setting policy. That's why we have the checks and balances in the system. I won't read through everything here. These are the types of things that happen when you don't have distinction between policy and administration. What can be learned from the private sector? Let's talk about who the shareholders are. Certainly, the taxpayers are our shareholders, our employees are our shareholders, and I always put the state of Wisconsin in here because, again, we are an extension or we are a partner with the state. Who is the board of directors in county government? The county board, certainly, would be the directors, the policymakers. Who is the CEO? That depends on which one of the three forms of government you have. Where do department heads fall in the organizational chart? So I changed this a while back, and I'll tell you why in just a little bit. But again, we talked about where the committees is where the heavy lifting is done, the majority of the work is done. Then that information goes to the county board. The county board then, through a county administrator or a county administrative coordinator, then they have the responsibility over the department heads to make sure that that policy is also done, and then the department heads are working with the county staff. So where do the county constitutional officers fall in here? And that's one of the things that people ask us all the time when they were included in the prior slide, because they were included with all the department heads were the same. So these are the county constitutional officers. The statutes say here's what you're required to have. With the exception of coroner, if you have an appointed medical examiner, then you don't have to have an elected coroner. Here's where I'm going to skip over a bunch of slides. Again, not that the constitutional officers are not important, but I want to try and make a point here. So let's talk about the county clerk. The county clerk is elected it's the same time when our president gets elected for 4-year terms. That is fairly recent that county clerks get 4-year terms, or county constitutional officers get 4-year terms. It used to be 2-year terms. Personally, I think that's a good thing. But the Constitution, other than saying when they get elected, the Constitution is pretty silent on what the duties and responsibilities are for the county clerk. But the statutes in 59.23 talks about the authority of the county clerk. And I won't read all of these, but I do want to give you an example here. These are the duties and responsibilities of the clerk. I went to a county board meeting, this is about 5 or 6 years ago now, to do some training. And I saw the county clerk. I was getting ready to do my presentation, and she was sitting in the back of the room, not up on a dais, sort of what we have here. And I said, well, why aren't you up front? And she said, the county board took away my authority to do any agendas or minutes or do anything. So I am the clerk, but I have no duties and responsibilities. And I did my presentation that night, but then I had a conversation with the county board chair and said, you cannot do that. You cannot take any authority away from any of your county constitutional officers. Nothing. The statutes are pretty clear about what their duties and responsibilities are. You can ask them to take on additional duties, and if they determine and they're willing to work with you, they can do that. And absolutely a lot of the constitutional officers do that. But please remember that you cannot take any authority away from your county constitutional officers. So maybe they're not doing the performance that are up to the standards that you like, but the statutes are clear. You cannot take any authority away from them. I wanted to go to the treasurer's page because there's one difference here, in the sheriff's page than any of the other county constitutional officers. But I also want to mention, so some of the constitutional officers are elected when the president gets elected. Some are elected when the governor of the state of Wisconsin gets elected. So it's whatever the statutes say. So the only difference here with the sheriff, really, I shouldn't say the only difference, but the significant difference with the authority of, or what the Constitution says about the sheriff, is that a sheriff cannot hold any other partisan office. If they are sheriff, they cannot run for any other office that would be partisan. No other county constitutional officer has that limitation. So I'm going to skip through several pages here. So about the duties, and I talked a little bit about the duties of the county constitutional officers. Since the Constitution is mostly silent on those duties or their powers or obligations, then how do we determine what they're supposed to do and what their duties and responsibilities are? Well, we have to look to the statutory duties and the protections that the courts have given our county constitutional officers, and then we also have to look at the constitutional duties as they have been defined and revised over years by the courts. So in this slide, I include the county constitutional officers again, but make that point that they're not the same as your other department heads because they have statutory and constitutional authority. That doesn't mean that you have to function a lot differently with them than you do with the others, but you have to work together. And in almost every case, there's a very good working relationship between the county constitutional officers and the county board. Staff compared to county board supervisors, staff have to have the appropriate education experience. Many of them are background, should have, them all should be background checked. Usually they're bonded, professionally current, members of professional associations. When it comes to the county board, you're elected by the people. So as long as you're over 18 years old, you live within that district, you can even live outside of the district, but if you get elected, you have to move into that district. You cannot be a convicted felon. A friend of mine once was knocking on doors, and he was actually a trailer. And while he was there, my friend was trying to get a signature, and the guy said, I don't think I can sign that because I'm going to be a felon soon. And then the question was asked, well, have you been convicted as a felon or not? Because if he had not already been convicted, then he could sign the nomination forms. But he hadn't been convicted, so he signed the forms and then asked my friend if he, it was that time of the year, he asked him if he would help take the snowblower and put it inside the trailer. So county board supervisors, you get elected, you have that local connection to the people, and that's extremely important. I'm going to skip some of these slides so we can get to the end. Micromanaging. Micromanaging is one of the worst things that can happen to employee morale. And so we strongly suggest, I saw in my personal case in Verona where we had a number of newly elected officials. Some of them worked part-time, and they were spending hours and hours and hours at City Hall. They would go from one department head to the next department head to the next department head. And I will tell you this, I get in a lot of municipalities, more counties than anything else. Your employees are not just waiting for you to walk through the door because they're waiting for something to do. They have jobs to do, and you have to respect that. Don't micromanage. Please don't micromanage your staff. Know your job. Try not to interfere with that of the administration. Devote the time necessary to do a good job. It's a little bit different now because people are getting their agendas and minutes and board packets, a lot of cases on electronic devices. I can't tell you how many times I go to a meeting and I see half the board and they got the packets, hard copies, that they were opening them up for the first time when they got into the meeting. That's not being fair and responsible to your colleagues on the county board or to your staff. Admit what you don't know. I know that's really hard for some elected officials to say, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with saying that I don't know right now and I need to get back to you. I have to do some checking on that. Don't jump to conclusions. Always hear and weigh all the facts. Keep your mind open to change. Understand that the administrator or administrative coordinator, what you have, is practicing, or a department head, practicing a career, a highly complex one, which we know is getting more complex all the time. I strongly suggest that as County Board Supervisors, you do not become a complaint department. Because what we've seen is when a supervisor or a number of supervisors decide that they're going to just listen to any complaint that might be out there, that's going to be a full-time job listening to complaints. And they have no authority. You have no authority unless you've been given by the board or a committee to investigate or even have those types of conversations. So again, I think it's important that when there are complaints or questions that you do that through your administration as much as you possibly can and department heads. And it's also important to have a written process how you're going to handle complaints. Another thing that I found that's been very successful with dealing with complaints is ask the person who has come forward with a complaint to put it in writing. And I find that most complaints go away when you ask somebody to put them in writing because they really aren't a complaint. Do not make promises outside the board, not only for legal reasons, but for the respect and the ethics of the situation. So you have to be careful if individual supervisors are out there trying to make decisions, or if they don't have the direction from the county board or committee to do something, that could be a liability for your insurance programs as well. Listen to your constitutional officers. Like I said, almost all the constitutional officers that we work with are very good at what they do, and they want to do their job. So listen to them, work with them. That doesn't mean you can't question anything, but they have a lot to offer you as well. I talked about complaints. Again, as many of the complaints as you possibly can. Work that through administrative staff first. I'm dealing with the county right now where in a meeting where something was not on the agenda, all of a sudden a supervisor blurted out a complaint that an individual in the clerk's office was giving information to her husband, who was the town chair, and giving information to one person, not giving it to another, and not being fair. And those types of things, if there's a question, and it wasn't true. It's been determined now that it wasn't true what the individual was saying, but that already is out there publicly, and it's in a recorded meeting. So always try and handle those internal if you possibly can. If you have to criticize a county employee, do it constructively. Criticize their work rather than them as an individual, because then it really becomes personal when you do that as an individual. Do not surprise the administration at board meeting. I have a very good friend of mine who served on the city council. Every year, the night we approved the budget, he would come up with a question that almost every time we would have to recess the city council meeting so they could do some investigation on what the impact of that decision was. He knew well in advance that he was going to ask the question, so why wait until the meeting? Work with your department heads, work with your staff. Chain of command is very important. I won't go into a lot of detail there. We're almost to the end. Key points to remember. Counties are a creature of the state. We can only do what the statutes and the Constitution allow us to do. And I will remind you that from time to time, the state has pulled back when they think that we're crossing the line. County boards are to serve as a legislative body. They approve policy, annual budgets, and they make cooperative decision making. That's important. You work as a body. Collaboration, cooperation is extremely important. County boards work most effectively when they utilize a strong committee system. I'm sure that most of you know that. That's where you do most of the work. Individual county supervisors have no management or leadership role outside of a county committee or commission. One of the counties I'm working with right now, and it's unfortunate, but the county does not have very good broadband. So a newly now supervisor who has been on the board for 13 months has no internet capabilities at her home. So she comes to the courthouse on a daily basis, has pretty much taken over one of the meeting rooms, has a computer set up there, that's hers. And she goes from department head to department head in the county and threatens them on a regular basis. No one has given her any authority to talk to department heads about being fired or being put on a performance improvement program, that type of thing. Individual supervisors do not have that authority unless they've been given that authority. County administration and department heads are to implement the policies and procedures of the board. The board and the administrative team working cohesively and again work cooperatively provide the best chance of success in meeting the needs of county residents. I always work very closely with the local government center at UW Extension. Von Briesen Roper is general legal counsel to the Counties Association, and then I always have some of the other staff at WCA take a look at any of our presentations. One thing that I want to mention, I was going to mention earlier, when we talk about the three forms of government, I get this question all the time, well, if we hire a county administrator, or if we hire a full-time county administrative coordinator, is that going to take care of all of our problems? And I will say that it's more who you hire, he or she, the working relationships then that they have with the board and with the staff. It's more the individual than it is the position. I'm not ever going to tell you that if you go to a county executive form or a county administrative form of government, that all your problems will go away. But it does require the board to understand that you're a policy-making body and not an administrative body. So it's the chemistry is what really makes the difference. And I'd be more than happy to talk to you about some of the experiences I've seen in other counties. So, Mr. Chair, I think we're ready for questions.
Are there any questions out there for John?
Mr. Chairman, I need to ask to be excused. I have a final exam to give at school, so I'm sure they're waiting with bated breath for my appearance.
You are excused, ma'am. Any questions? One more time. Any questions for John? That was quite a comprehensive presentation. Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The students didn't want you to show. That was a fantastic presentation. Thank you very much for that. The only thing that I wanted to comment on was that on pages 29 and 39, you had organizational structure. We had a county board and the committees on the side, and then we had an administrator or administrative coordinator on that, under that. And here, I've been preaching otherwise with our current setup. So we have an administrative coordinator. I'm saying we've got the county board, and under that we have the committees, and under that we have the department heads, including the constitutional officers. And I think one could argue either way, but I think that I'd like to have your comment on whether or not you think that that's an appropriate way of looking at things when you have an administrative coordinator who hasn't been given specific duties other than those contained in the statute. Thank you.
I would say in most cases, and under the organizational chart that you described, if you have a weak form of administrative coordinator when they've been given no duties and responsibility, even though your organizational chart says that's how it should work, it won't work that way. They'll go to the committees and then to the full board. That's usually what happens. So on that issue, there's a couple counties right now that are taking a look at their structure, and this is a good time actually, because not really 10 years ago, after the laws were changed, and the public also had the authority by petition and referendum to reduce the size of the board. 10 years ago, we saw a lot of that. I haven't heard of any counties having that conversation right now, but I just did a presentation recently for Jefferson County on redistricting county board size, because they were taking a look at their structure, not necessarily board size, but at their structure. and reminded people that following the 2020 census, you will be required to do redistricting. So, someone brought up that night, one of the supervisors said, well, in whole, our county is not growing. They were losing population in some of the rural areas, but there were 2 villages that were growing rapidly. So they will be required to do redistricting no matter what. And, the county just thought, well, that would be a good idea to take a look at the structure of our committees and how many committee members we have on. So some other counties that I'm working with are Richland County. They have established a committee taking a look at their structure. Grant County, done a number of presentations down there. Langley County actually passed a resolution that by June of 2020, they will dissolve the administrative coordinator's position, which is currently held by the Corporation Council, and will have either a full-time administrative coordinator or county administrator. So recently, the most recent counties that have gone to the county administrator, I'll give a couple examples. One was Green Lake County. And Green Lake County is a really good example of where the clerk, longtime clerk, was the administrative coordinator. They actually gave her, and Lance knows her well, they gave Marge Vosterman duties and responsibilities, and she functioned almost as a county administrator, except that she didn't make appointment authorities. But when she retired, they said, we believe it's going to take 2 people to fill our position. So we need to create a county administrator's position who fully has those duties and responsibility, and then the clerk assuming all the responsibilities of the clerk. And then Sawyer and Price were two other good examples. And Price County was one of the counties there was a reduction in board size forced upon them by a referendum. And they said, we're a much smaller board, we can't do the things that we were doing before, and we need to create the position of county administrator. And I would suggest that if any one of these positions where if you take a look at changing your structure, there's a couple counties that have strong administrative coordinator form of government, where there's actually duties and responsibilities that are outlined for them. And then there's a number of the counties that I would say you probably would want to have conversations with that have made that transition to a county administrator. It's one thing for me to say it, I've got a lot of experience as well, but when you've got counties that are working with it right now, and we had a 3-person panel that had about 2 hours just on the administrative structure of county government.
Any other questions for John? Any other questions? I guess not. Thank you, John.
I would just say we're always available, and if you need anything, I promise you it won't be as long as this time.
Thank you again. One final note this morning I'd like to mention, I'm not sure if everyone's gotten this yet, but it was about a year ago when we started down the track of our ATV trail system development, when we were going to open up some county roads and expand that trail system. We are ready to have a ribbon cutting ceremony, and so a lot of work has gone into that by a lot of department heads, a lot of committees, and we are going to celebrate it. If you haven't gotten this, you'll be getting it shortly in your email, so we are going to celebrate it a bit. We're going to have another event in Pittsfield down the road, but if you've looked at it, we've got some real good partners there that are very excited about what we're doing in the county. We, of course, look at that as a big piece of our economic development. The whole chunk are strong partners there. We have some dealerships that are very excited. It looks like it's going to be a great event, so I would encourage everyone that can to be there. There'll be some ATVs. If you don't have one yourself, some of the dealerships are going to bring them. And there should be we may have some dignitaries there from the state level as well. So it's going to be a big event. Put it on your calendar. That being said, is there anything else, Supervisor Plymouth?
Real quickly, if I may, Mr. Chair, just want to remind you, as long as we got John here, the conference, the WCA conference resolution deadline, 4:30 on the 24th of June. 4:30 on the 24th of June if you need something to get in. And one of the issues we're going to look at there too is the jail problem that almost every county is experiencing. We know that we can't afford somewhere between $1 billion and $2 billion this year in the state to construct jails, and there's got to be an underlying issue. We need to look at this, and we're going to try to get that on the agenda for that one. So any input you can give me would be greatly appreciated.
We all know that that discussion is going on in our county as well right now. So anything else that needs to come before this board this morning? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Second by Brad. All in favor of that motion indicate